Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai speaks on the security situation in the state and reasons why federal government may not be going all out offensive against the bandits. And efforts to fix some of the loopholes in the Nigerian Constitution continues with the laying of the amended portions of the document now before the National Assembly. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimale in Abuja. Let's begin tonight by continuing our countdown to the electoral bill and looking ahead to the president signing or assent into the bill. It's now 24 days since the National Assembly retransmitted, amended, and of course went to the president with another copy of the electoral bill. This comes after the president has first rejected the bill, but he told Channels Television in an exclusive interview that he will sign the bill should the National Assembly fix all the gray areas he pointed out to them. And so the nation now eagerly awaits the president's assent and hoping that he will keep to his promise of signing the bill. We're all looking forward to tomorrow, the possibility of the president assenting to the bill. It will be a big day for Nigeria elections and looking forward to some of the new developments in that law. Let's tell you that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has made some massive redeployment of some of its senior staff across the country. The commission, after its meeting today, says the decision is to ensure efficient and optimal performance. The affected 186 staff for immediate deployment. Among them are 46 HOD staff, either who are serving in their state of origin or have served for between 10 and 32 years in the same state. The commission considers its development as unhealthy for the sensitive responsibilities these senior staff discharge. In line with the commission's existing posting policy, henceforth, the commission says no head of department, HOD that is, or electoral officer, EO, shall serve in his or state of origin. Furthermore, the commission says no staff shall serve for more than 2 electoral cycles in the same duty post. Well, the travails of the former Imo State Governor and sitting federal lawmakers, Senator Rochas Okorocha, over allegations of financial crimes appears not to be over. Well, more development on this case have come up. Today, a federal high court sitting in Abuja has ordered the interim forfeiture of a property in Garki area of Abuja, which, according to the EFCC, is reasonably suspected to be proceeds of unlawful activities of former Imo State Governor, Senator Rochas Okorocha. Justice Emeka Nwite gave the order while ruling on a motion ex parte brought by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, pursuant to Section 44, subsection 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Section 17 of the Advanced Fee Fraud and Other Fraud-Related Offences Act number 14, 2006, seeking the forfeiture of the property on the grounds that it was acquired illegally. The commission stated that in its investigation, it reveals that sometime in 2018, Aptisal Global Limited and Aki Visual Solution Limited, companies in which Okorocha is believed to have interest, received about 222 million naira from the Imo State government treasury to develop and improve on the said property in Gariki area of Abuja. In the ruling, the court directed that the interim forfeiture order be published in the national dailies, alerting anyone with interest in the property to show cause why it should not be forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria. Justin Whitty adjourned till April 13, 2022 for consideration of the motion for final forfeiture of the property. We have so much more for you on our political roundup. Take a listen to some of your stories.
Why should you be second? And I reminded him yesterday.
Following the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the House of Representatives is calling for the immediate evacuation of Nigerians living in Ukraine. Lawmakers are concerned that there are many Nigerian students in Ukraine who could be caught up in the crossfire. The motion was moved by Representative Ahmed Munir. Meanwhile, Nigeria's foreign minister has also reacted to the escalating hostile invasion of Ukraine by Russia.
First priority is to the Nigerian citizens that find themselves in Ukraine at the moment.
President Muhammadu Buhari has commissioned some federal and state projects in Nasarawa State. The projects comprise of the Lafia Cargo Airport, the Akurba Power Substation of the National Integrated Power Project, the Lafia Bus Terminal, and the Shinge-Kilema Road. The flight conveying President Muhammadu Buhari touched down at the Lafia Airport at 10 a.m. Thursday morning on a state visit. The president came to commission some federal and state projects. The ribbons at the Lafia Airport received the first cut. The transmission power substation at Akurba is also formally opened. Among the National Integrated Power Projects, the station connects the state to the national grid. This is the president's first visit to the state since the assumption of office of Governor Abdullahi Sule. Other state projects, including the Lafia Bus Terminal and the Shinge-Kilema Road, were also commissioned by the president.
So far, we have over...
The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, has donated relief materials worth millions of naira to victims of frequent bandit attacks in Zanko Kataf local government area of Kaduna State. The NEMA zonal coordinator, Albani Imam, who announced the donation, says the government is concerned about the welfare of the victims of the attacks in the area, urging the people to embrace peace and live together with one another irrespective of their religious or ethnic differences. The leaders of the internally displaced persons of Bakassi are calling on the government of the day to checkmate activities of those who receive funds from the federal government with the aim of reaching the IDPs. Speaking in Calabar after a peaceful demonstration by leaders of the Bakassi IDPs, they explained that some organizations have been defrauding the federal government by diverting funds meant for the displaced persons to personal empowerment programs and leaving the Bakassi people out of the gesture. They are hoping that the government intervenes, especially as those who already surrendered their arms are given reasons to embrace other options that will offer them a livelihood.
You are not empowering Bakassi displaced people. You are not empowering them. You are not helping them in any way. You are leaving them to suffer. And I don't understand why, those at the head of those institutions do not contact the leadership.
Right, then you've been served with some of the political roundup stories. Let's tell you that the Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai was at the presidential villa today, and he's been speaking about the security situation in the city. He says that simultaneous bombing of all bandits in states affected will significantly wipe out banditry and terrorism besetting the northwest region of the country. The governor was at a weekly ministerial briefing at the State House. He says that the fear of being dragged before the International Court of Justice, ICJ, prevented the military from engaging the bandits and permanently wiping them out. According to him, the banditry issue has become a multi-million naira business in the northwest region, which far outweighs the challenge of Boko Haram in the northeast. Take a listen to Governor El-Rufai.
What we've always said is the way to end this banditry is simultaneous military and ground operations. If we have the Air Force bombing the camps, we know where the camps are. We have the maps. We know everything. We have their phone numbers. We listen to their conversations sometimes. So, but it has to be done across the 5 states and Niger State at the same time. What we've been doing over the years is you go to Zamfara, you chase them out, they move to Sokoto. You go to Sokoto, you chase them out, they move to Kebbi. From Kebbi, they move to Katsina, Kaduna. And they move seamlessly because of the forest ranges. So what needs to be done is at the same time bomb the forests, bomb the camps, and have ground troops on the ground as a blocking force, consisting of the army, the police, the Air Force Special Forces, Navy Special Forces on the ground, and just wipe them out once and for all. Of course, that has risks because some of the camps may also contain innocent people that have been kidnapped. But this is war. In war, you always have collateral damage, unfortunately. And if we continue piecemeal approach to this banditry, it will continue to grow, because the amount of money these guys are making is so much that they will not stop.
There you have it. The governor of Kaduna State, El-Rufai, had a weekly ministerial briefing in Abuja today. That was not the only issue he touched on. He also spoke about the politics in his party, APC, and looking ahead to the National Convention, which is now slated for the 26th of March 2022. Take a listen to him.
I will support any APC candidate if I'm satisfied he will do the best for Nigeria. I will. It doesn't matter where he's from, southwest, southeast, south. APC is what matters. And the quality of the person. And the discussion we are having is that the presidency is zoned to the south. It's not zoned to any particular place in the south. The South will have the first go at it. But we're waiting to see who are the aspirants. You know, a few people have declared their interest. We are waiting.
Well, there you go. Well, there's something that is bothering the whole world, is the activities in Russia and what the Russian government is doing, or the president of that country is doing to Ukraine, a neighbor country. Well, the leader in Ukraine, Zelensky, has declared martial law put in place in Ukraine after the invasion of Russia. And there is some casualties and palpable fear in Ukraine as Russia invaded Ukraine, an action that has drawn the attention of the entire world, with reactions from the United States, Germany, and some other NATO member countries. The federal government of Nigeria is planning a special flight operation to evacuate Nigerians from Ukraine amid the escalating crisis in Ukraine. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced these efforts today in Abuja, where Russian President Vladimir Putin had announced a military operation in Ukraine, with explosions heard soon after across the country, and its foreign minister warning a full-scale invasion was on the way. Well, Nigeria's foreign minister has been speaking on the federal government's effort. Let's take a listen to what the federal government is doing in relation to Nigerians who are stranded or who are presently in Ukraine.
Our first priority is to the Nigerian citizens that find themselves in Ukraine at the moment. We've been engaging over the last 3 weeks with our embassy in the Ukraine, and I've been personally in touch with the ambassador on almost daily basis since then. And of course, the big challenge was whether to issue a travel advisory for all the Nigerian students and others living in Ukraine to leave. Now, an advisory was given that those who felt the need to leave should do so. The consensus amongst the diplomatic representation of the various countries in Ukraine was that the citizens should stay. Of course, Russia was asserting that they were not going to invade, while of course the US, as we know, and some other Western countries were saying that an invasion was imminent. So it was difficult to know who to really believe. The Ukrainian government was assuring the citizens there that they should just go about their normal business. And some Nigerian students who were interviewed, said that, to all intents and purposes, they were totally oblivious and unaware of any crisis. And it was just, when they turned on the news or whatever, that they heard that there might be some issues. So, so the advice from our mission was, not to panic.
That's Nigeria's Foreign Minister, Mr. Onyema there. But the House of Representatives had called for the immediate evacuation of Nigerians in Ukraine. The lawmakers were concerned that there are many Nigerian students in Ukraine who could be caught in the crossfire. The motion was moved by a House of Reps member, Ahmed Muniri, during plenary earlier today. But some lawmakers feared that it may be too late, as the evacuation should have been done long ago. Take a listen to the speaker on the floor today.
I think it's better late than never. And I think it's important at this point to forget all the bureaucratic bottlenecks. I think what is important now, if we actually have to look out for our citizens, especially the students, I think action needs to be taken now. And my thought is that the leader of the House and the chairman for Foreign Affairs, are you prepared to jet off to Ukraine tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
I think the leader of the House, the chairman of Foreign Affairs,
yes,
should liaise with the Foreign Affairs Ministry today.
With all sense
and
of responsibility,
if nothing positive comes out of that meeting and it's all about red tape, we have to do this, we have to do that, I think you should liaise with the chairman, Air Peace.
Yes.
And whatever it's going to cost the House, whatever we need to do, I think we need to leave this. You need to leave this country latest tomorrow and head to Ukraine and head on back by Monday with as many students or citizens who are willing to come back.
Yes,
I think that's very important.
All right, there you have it. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, on the efforts of Nigeria and what the lawmakers hope that will happen in a couple of days. Well, let's get some insight on what this means for Nigerians living in Ukraine, the situation, how much of escalation we could be expecting from this, especially from the interventions across the world. Look, when these kind of things happen, we are not living in isolation. We're part of the global community, and we need to be concerned as much as some Nigerians will be in Ukraine, and we also are concerned about what is happening in that country and for the citizens of that country. Let's first and foremost get some insight from Professor or Associate Professor of History and International Relations in the University of Lagos, Dr. Dapo Thomas joins us via Zoom. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas, for joining us tonight. Give us a sense of where to go at this kind of situation when there are fears of being caught in the crossfire. What do you think is needed? The standard procedure that governments need to take to ensure that citizens of Nigeria, for example, are not injured or killed or caught in the crossfire, as the case may be?
Well, I think the international standard is that the safety of the passengers, because all commercial flights have been suspended, the safety of the passengers or the safety of any plane at all has to be guaranteed by both countries involved in the conflict. I mean, Ukraine and Russia, Russia especially. As at now, I doubt sincerely if that guarantee can be given by Russia because they are not ready to even allow any kind of flight, understand, as at now, because now there is air bombardment in Ukraine. And I know that Ukraine itself cannot even guarantee the safety of any passenger plane. Why? Because they do not have any kind of communication with the Russian leadership on how to secure or protect passenger flights. So I don't know. I don't think it is advisable for anybody now to venture into the airspace of both countries in the interest of, in order to save lives or anything. This should have been done long ago, particularly when it was, the body language of Putin was sufficient for any sensitive government to know that, look, this is going to be an all-out war, or there is going to be escalation of conflict. And So they should have preempted this kind of scenario before, and the government should have taken a preemptive action, possibly maybe 5 days ago, 4 days ago.
Thomas, if I may quickly come in, aside the fear and the responsibility of Nigerian government and the efforts that are being made in getting some of the Nigerians who are staying in Ukraine back, because you cannot estimate whether, how long this invasion will take and the possible escalation of this. What, in your view, should be done by countries like the UK, the US, Germany, and France, and other bigger countries of the world in stemming the tide of this invasion?
Well, there is nothing that could be done now apart from them engaging Russia in the conflict, because a war has been declared. And once the war has been declared, it's always very difficult. I'm not saying that there is an end to diplomacy, but you could see from the body language of Putin that he was not even ready for any kind of diplomatic engagement. So now it is not time for any form of persuasion or any form of rapprochement. This is the time to engage in the objective there is to defend Ukraine, Ukraine's sovereignty, and not to engage Russia in any conflict or any war. But what I feel, as at now, they are still working on sanctions. They are still hoping that sanctions will work sanctions will force Putin to de-escalate the tension, to de-escalate the situation in Russia and in Ukraine. But it is when sanctions fail that military action, decisive military action, can now be coordinated or can now be conceptualized. As at now, I would not allow further escalation because now, apart from what Putin did in the morning, what Russia did in the morning, I think there is a kind of reduction in the area bombardment and in the attacks. But the ones carried out in the morning were sufficient enough to suggest that Putin actually means business. I think it was a warning. It was a warning salvo that he fired, and that he was ready to go the whole hog. And in any case, he has even threatened that any nation that interferes in this particular scenario, any nation that attempts to stop Russia from achieving its objective of dealing with Ukraine, that country is going to find itself in a very serious situation. So for now, let them continue.
All right, Dr. Thomas, it seems to be some interference in the audio line, but I mean, if you erase that, and I can just get your final thought on this very one. If history has taught us any lesson, we'll know that when it involves this country, the history of the USSR, what happened in the early 90s, and some of the past wars that we have seen in human history, the prayers are that this kind of situation needs to be stemmed, or I mean, will forbid any kind of escalation. But going forward, what would you suggest on the part of Nigerian government to ensure that we are somewhat insulated from this kind of situation, God forbid any escalation?
Well, except you are thinking of the use of nuclear capabilities, if we are going to limit this conflict to the use of conventional weaponry, I don't think that Nigeria in any way can be affected. Going by geography, I don't think it will be affected. But well, it has wider range, so it's very difficult. So except the nuclear capabilities are deployed, into these conflicts, I don't think Nigeria is any way under any kind of threat from Ukraine. I mean, from whatever is happening now in the Eastern European country. So I don't think in Eastern Europe, I don't think for now, psychologically, geographically, we seem to be insulated from any kind of effect now. But the moment the countries involved deploy nuclear capabilities, then no nation is safe in the world. No nation is safe in the world.
God forbid that happens, but we really do wish some of our brothers and sisters who are in Ukraine are able to be evacuated and returned to us safely. And we do hope that the situation and the escalation there in Ukraine will be stemmed so that every life is protected. Thank you so much, Dr. Dapo Thomas, for joining us tonight. Let me introduce my guest tonight, or the guest that we have tonight on the program. He's a professor of law. He was the 5th Director General of the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies from 2009 and 2014. He is a judge at the Commonwealth Arbitral Tribunal sitting in London, where he represents Nigeria and Africa. He's a founder and senior partner at Azinge and Azinge, a law firm in Abuja, with his wife, Valerie Azinge, a senior advocate of Nigeria. He joins us from his home in Abuja. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us. Let's begin the conversation from the major story across the globe right now, the situation in Ukraine. From your own point of view, where you stand right now, what are your biggest fears?
Well, war at any level is not something that one should be proud of at any point in time. Because with war comes decimation, with war comes destruction, with war comes killings, annihilation, as the case may be. So to that extent, it is certainly an unwelcome development at this point in time in a world that has been ravaged for the past 2 years with COVID pandemic. For us to now face this uncertainty coming from Russia and Ukraine axis. So one is very, very uncomfortable about the likely consequences that will flow from there, whether one of human destruction, infrastructural destruction, and certainly the effect it will have on the global economy, amongst others. But we should also take into consideration the likelihood of refugees that will flow over from Ukraine and other spheres to other countries like Poland, amongst others. So these are very, very challenging times in Europe and indeed the whole world. And one is not totally comfortable with this development. But we should also try and see and be sure that it does not escalate to use of weapons of mass destruction, that the deployment of missiles and other atomic energy weapons are not utilized at this point in time. So we keep praying, hoping that the human destruction will not be that much, but certainly something must give. The United Nations Security Council should take decisive action at this point in time, and the NATO community should not be in a hurry to abandon Ukraine, because the basic reason why Russia seems to be trying to get grip and hold of the NATO-Ukraine alliance is just because they are deadly challenges that they envisage that may come from such an alliance and with a country that is within proximity to Russia, as the case may be. So these are challenges that Russia may be thinking that they must come to terms with and obviously solve their riddle or problem as early as possible. I wouldn't know what the legal international law implications of what they just did, what President Putin did. Firstly, trying to recognize a separatist movement, and then secondly, moving in as trying to avoid other measures that would have, come with the open aggression initiated into an independent Ukraine. But moving through the separatist unions that are already in conflict with the broader Ukraine government, and then using that as an opportunity to gain entry into Ukraine and then continue their invasion from there. So these are challenges, and we just pray that things are controlled early enough to avoid total breakdown of law and order, as the case may be.
We need to be able to get some lessons out of this. If history has taught us anything, is that and whenever these kind of clashes happen, there are a lot of takeaways from it. Prof, any lesson that we can take away immediately so far?
Well, it is also a grim reminder of what we are facing in this country. We have separatist agitations in Nigeria at this point in time. This will also be a lesson for us that it may open up a different divisive tendencies here and there, and obviously open us up for dismemberment, as the case may be. We should be very, very careful. We should also be careful of the likelihood of the terrorist groups using this as also an excuse to form a more or less a factional group that can wage a war against the government of the Federation. But more importantly, we should also know that such divisive tendencies are never good for anybody, that certainly having fought war once in this country, it will be totally unwary for us to think of another war, whichever way it may be. That war is never good for any country. And no nation, and I dare say this, that no nation seems to have survived a second civil war of any nature. So we should be preaching peace. We should be looking forward towards peace, and we should try and do everything humanly possible to make sure that peace reigns in our country, Nigeria.
You look at it now, the situation in Ukraine, what Russia is doing has forced the price of oil to over $100 per barrel. So this is the first time in the global oil market that this is happening in several months. When do you see this kind of tension fully de-escalated? I mean, based on what we have seen in history.
Well, like I said, let's face it, for instance, there are so many people that will benefit, wittingly or otherwise, from this conflict. Well, if the price of oil goes up, as one will always expect that it will, and continue to escalate, because there are some divisions here and there in the oil-producing nations, amongst others, then automatically Nigeria may stand to benefit. And then, of course, it can show up our oil finances to a very large extent. Yes, but will that be what we should be hoping for? Or should that be an excuse for us to be praying for an escalation of the conflict because we're likely to have some economic benefits falling out from there? But what I think should be done, and that is what I have alluded to, the Security Council should obviously start immediately imposing sanctions on Russia so that they can whittle down the effect of whatever they stand to benefit from the invasion of Ukraine. And then, of course, the NATO alliance should try as much as possible to give all necessary support. It is rather unfortunate that most of the NATO countries are not prepared to lend their forces to fight on behalf of Ukraine. But would it not get to that position if obviously they really want to support Ukraine in that regard? What other military assistance are they likely to get from the NATO countries in that regard? So one should think that it could only go beyond just standing by them, behind them, and then because we don't know the military strength of Ukraine compared to that of the mighty Russia. So it can only be a walkover, a walk in the park, as the case may be. But we believe that the whole world at this point in time should stand up and support Ukraine to the best of their ability, so that this aggression should de-escalate, and then, of course, this matter will be brought to a halt as soon as possible, so that peace can also reign once more in the whole world.
So let's come to Nigeria and look at the situation of things, especially as it's concerned the effort in fixing our constitution. There's been a lot of agitation. I guess this is going to be the 5th alteration to the Nigerian constitution, the 1999 constitution. So give us a sense of your view so far from the areas that are being altered, and perhaps what this could mean for our democratic development.
Well, it has been an expansive and an extensive, comprehensive intervention by the National Assembly. The much I know as a consultant to the Senate on the Constitutional Review. And I believe that the Ninth Assembly seems to have taken the bull by the horn. And if things work out the way they have projected, it is going to be very, very comprehensive. Well, let us look at it from many angles. They've taken on issues that will affect the judiciary, affect the legislature, and even affect the executive. Constitutional reviews that will affect even traditional rulers. Constitutional review that will affect the position or the status of the Federal Capital Territory, whether it will remain as it is or whether it will become a mayoral. Constitutional provisions that will concern the issue of indigenship and citizenship as it applicable to most people who are not non-indigenous but residents in other parts of the country, and what are their entitlements and the benefits going forward. Constitutional reviews that will touch on the issue of immunity of some legislative officers, i.e. the Senate President and the Speaker, amongst other things. The issue of whether the age of judicial officers should be advanced or increased from 70 years to 75 years as applicable to justices of the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals, and then on the whole, 70 years for judges of the other superior courts, that is the Court of First Instance in particular. So a whole lot of proposals that have been put forward, a good number of them, whether the issue of VAT, for instance, will remain on the exclusive legislative list or whether it has to go to the concurrent legislative list, wherein the state governments will also superintend over them, as is the case that is being canvassed in some quarters. And the issue of slight devolution of power to an extent, of the issue of prisons, whether prison will remain on the exclusive legislative list or whether it will go to the concurrent list, wherein state government can now build up their prisons and also move accordingly, amongst so many other issues of railway, whether it will still be the exclusive preserve of the federal government or whether state governments will also have a grip of that and legislate accordingly for the provision, and including energy, power, whether the position will remain as it is or whether state government can now develop their power, transmit as the case may be, which has remained an impediment for many of the power grids and stations as the case may be. So these are issues, and a host more, a whole lot of them that this Ninth Assembly seem to be grappling with. And we are looking forward to a drastic, comprehensive amendment of the Constitution if the 5th alteration will proceed as it's going. And I know that for sure. They have proposed the 2nd and 3rd of March to vote accordingly. And you know it requires 2/3 majority of the votes of the members for that to scale through. And thereafter, it will now proceed to the state level, wherein just a resolution of the House of Assembly will be required for it to pass. So if we are thinking that by March 3rd, that it would have been over at the National Assembly level and then moving down to the state, I believe that all things being equal, give and take, by June or earlier or thereabout, this whole issue would have been over. So Nigerians of all shapes of persuasion are now encouraged that they have the chance to go back to their states and speak with their representatives at the state level to make sure that either they understand the whole gamut of what is going on and how to participate by helping to influence them in the resolution they want to put forward. But I believe that a lot of work has gone into the alterations proposed, and we wait to see how it will fare on the floor of the green chambers and the red chambers, respectively, come March 2nd and March 3rd of this year.
Let's look at this perspective, Prof. And it's the fact that there's been agitations about restructuring, issues of state police. These are some of the fundamental challenges that the nation is confronted with, the issue of insecurity. And perhaps the thinking of a lot of people will be, there will be some movement in this direction, that the National Assembly, the lawmakers, and those who are working on this next alteration will work in fixing areas of the Constitution that will empower the security architecture of the country, or somewhat restructure it or reorientate it or re-engineer it in such a way that it will stem the tide of insecurity in the country. What do you make of this area, and perhaps what is in the alteration? Does it answer the question of state policing and how we can go forward in fixing the insecurity question?
Well, for the members of the committee, the National Assembly members of the committee, I will say that arguments were canvassed and extensively, but I think regrettably it did not scale through the issue of state police. But I believe that that does not end the story. It is for the whole membership of the National Assembly to now vote as appropriate. Certainly, the tendency is likely to be that they will vote against. But there's nothing saying that the preponderance of members that were not in the committee may, in their own wisdom, decide to vote in favor of state policing. They have their own arguments, and then superior wisdom and superior arguments can prevail ultimately. But for now, it appears to be no to state police. They have their arguments for that purpose. But they also voted for the division and removal of separation of the office of the Attorney General from that of Minister of Justice, and a whole lot more that seem to be in the offing. It is unfortunate that one cannot make a clear-cut projection at this point in time what the vote will be for state police, but it does appear that it is a no for now. Well, I understand why that should be the case, because many people believe that at this point in time, for purposes of restructuring, we should be pushing towards state control. But they have arguments, and some of them appear plausible and convincing, persuasive, in the sense that it is likely to be mismanaged somewhere at the state level, that the command structure is what is critical. And the command structure is that the Inspector General of Police will continue to hold sway, as the case may be in this regard. So looking at things from that angle, I believe that they may have their reasons. Some of them have been state governors in their own right. So they understand the workings of the control structure of the police. And it is to them a much more plausible argument that we are not there yet for the state police to reign. So how that will affect the security architecture of our people at this point in time, I wouldn't know. But we just wait and pray. But in all other ramifications of that, as far as the alterations are concerned, I believe that the work they have done is quite profound, very, very deep. And I believe that it is something Nigerians will be proud of if actually it is concretized, if it is fully crystallized and well cemented going forward.
But for those who are pushing for restructuring and who have clamored for that, we say, look, we shouldn't even go into the 2023 election without effectively restructuring this country. How much of their fears and concern would this alteration be serving?
Well, in trying to address some aspects of devolution of power, I believe to that extent the issue of restructuring is gaining ground. When we talk about the prison, when we talk about VAT, when we talk about the possibility of which other one, VAT, prison, amongst others, the railway, the power, among all these are trying to yield some of this to the state government control through the concurrent legislative list or the residual legislative list, as we say in constitutional law, which is only within the control of the state. If we consider that, seriously speaking, we are already working along restructuring. So it is only right to argue that to a very large extent, the National Assembly, wittingly or otherwise, are touching on issues of devolution. It may not be a wholesale restructuring, but the issue of devolving from the 68 provisions or items under the exclusive legislative list, trying to whittle it down to an extent that a good number of those items on that list can now move over to the concurrent legislative list, where the state government can also legislate. So to a large extent, that is restructuring for me. That is devolution of power. That is trying to take away so much from the federal government to the state government. If we're able to achieve that, we should also be thinking that we have restructured to a very large extent. Because the whole issue of restructuring is against the fact that the federal government seems to be an octopus that seems to be controlling so much. So if we're able to whittle down the items on the exclusive legislative list and wherein we can now feed some to the state government, then the issue of restructuring to a very large extent would have been addressed. So we don't need to dismember the whole country or the whole constitution in order for us to achieve restructuring. I don't think that will work when you have a sitting National Assembly presiding at this point in time.
I wanted our viewers to listen to the Deputy Senate President Ovia Omar Gege yesterday when the document, the draft was laid before the lawmakers. Take a listen to him and allow Prof to respond to some of the issues raised.
The report of the Constitution Review Committee will be laid on Wednesday tomorrow, and thereafter we'll take our vote on March 1st, which will be Tuesday. That will give us about 4 to 5 days to review the report, consult as we deem fit, and be prepared to vote.
So, give us a sense of, in terms of the procedures for passing a constitution, is a stringent one that the constitution has provided in amending some section of the constitution. Even this constitutional amendment itself takes a very, very tedious process. But give us a sense of what is next. What step should we be expecting from the laying and the voting in the National Assembly?
Well, the voting pattern is well expressed in the Constitution. It says that it should be passed by 2/3. So for any of the items, there will be a vote, and then we will count the number of people that have voted. And it is not 2/3 of those present and voting. It's 2/3 of the membership. So I've heard the leadership of the Senate trying to push that all members should endeavor to be in attendance on that day, and that all other meetings and activities of the National Assembly should come to a halt. In other words, there will be no excuse to travel, there will be no oversight function, there will be nothing else except being in attendance and voting. So it is for them to take stock and take records. What is the entire population or membership of the House of Rep? What is the entire population and membership of the House of the Senate? By the time you count the votes, would it aggregate to 2/3 majority? Because that has to be worked out. If it falls below 2/3, whatever 2/3 may be, it falls below 2/3, it means that that vote is dead on arrival, that item automatically will elapse, and they will now move on to the next one.
Right.
So it is.
I think the good thing is that they're taking it in piecemeal, but I know there are exceptions to the 2/3 rule, where clauses relating to Section 8 and 9, and some of the provisions in Section 315 of the Constitution, and those 4 areas: NYC decree, the Act of the Nigerian Security, and a few other issues that were raised in Section 315, which we need the 4/5 of the National Assembly to pass. I'm very sure that those clauses are not involved in these alterations, are they?
No, the clauses are not involved. That's why I'm only relying on what is on Section 8 of the Constitution. Because if we are talking about creation of states, amongst other things, perhaps we will now be thinking of a totally different proposition. Instead of 2/3, we should be talking about 4/5, as the case may be. But all the areas now under consideration are clearly within the ambit of Section 8, and to that extent, it only requires 2/3 majority for them to kill.
Right.
And thereafter, it will now go to the House of Assembly for their approval through resolution by members of the House of Assembly of the respective states of the Federation.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Epiphany Azinge, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and a law scholar. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
That's our program tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Sean Kimale. Bye for now.